doing is exactly the kind of research that we need for our music history, not just in Iowa, but I mean across the whole country. We really need to honor the legacy of these musicians and these ballrooms and the history and tell the story. And he did so in such a great way, and what I really liked was he had the research to show and back it up with the pictures and the archives and the videos and the posters. It made it really come alive. I think what I really liked about it was how a lot of the local bands, and they had ties, they got to meet, you know, Buddy Holly or some of these bigger bands. I think that's fascinating to me, and so those pictures he showed and that sort of thing really interesting.
The thing that you brought up, the corn-fed rock and roll,
yeah,
or ballroom.
Yes.
Iowa must have really been hip in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, it still is. But it was, yeah. Iowa had more ballrooms per capita than any other state in the country. And so consequently, we did have a lot of national acts here as well, but the music scene was really huge. And part of that, also in the Iowa Great Lakes area, the Okoboji-Arnolds Park area was big, which is just about 200 miles or so from here, was because it was this conjunction where the railroads met from Minneapolis to Sioux Falls, South Dakota to Omaha. There was the interstates and all of that. Yeah, so it was always a stop off on the way to like a legacy. They want to kind of build on what they're doing, isn't it?
Sure. What about the influence? His theme was the influence of rock and roll on teen women. What is that effect?
You know, I've thought about this a lot. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit younger. I wasn't around in the 50s and 60s
you held up well.
to do all of that stuff. But you know, he mentioned just briefly, he didn't touch on it very much, but like the allowance and how the teenage generation really had buying power in the 50s and 60s. And really, that has continued through today, and that's really what influences what's happening socially and culturally with music and with other issues as well. And so it's kind of the start of it. It's the start of that whole teenage culture that's still going on. And I always find it interesting how, you know, the teenagers, they're really into rock and roll, say in the 50s, which was completely opposite of what their parents were listening to with swing music. It was always something that was a little on edge, a little different from what the adults or their parents listened to, so that, you know, there was something kind of You know, Elvis Presley played at the Bel Air in Des Moines. It was his first gig north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Really?
Yeah, in 1956. So it was his first big northern performance. And there were protests from church and other communities. So they didn't want their kids, you know, going and seeing, you know, this guy swinging his hips. So, and again, that took place in Iowa too. So his big first northern performance. And, you know, we've got...
It's rock and roll?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Statewide nonprofit organization, the Iowa Rock and Roll Music Association. We started in 1997, so this is our 18th year. And we really have 4 divisions of the association. We have a Hall of Fame, where we kind of honor the pioneers, but we also honor music teachers, venues, promoters, DJs, and every year we have a concert in Okoboji over Labor Day weekend, which is a hoot. Some of these bands come together, they haven't played together in 30 years, and they, you know, perform especially for this ceremony. We also have a museum, and that's part of what Jonas has contacted us about. We collect a lot of the memorabilia and catalog and archive local Iowa information. So we have that as well. We also have an education division where we go out to schools and teach them about their local Iowa artists, because we want this legacy to continue. But we also want to teach them about how the music has evolved, and what they're listening to today relates to the roots of rock and roll and rockabilly and all of that sort of music. And then we also do a statewide concert series. So all across the state, all year long, we hire local musicians and pay them a fair wage, which is sometimes tough for live music, and offer people the opportunity to come hear live music and support their local artists.
Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure, of course.